Have you ever heard of the cognitive bias, declinism? Don't go back and check your first date. It's not there. Declinism is the tendency for people to perceive the past as better than it was and view the future as more dire than it probably will be. We see this all over the news and headlines about the state of healthcare, our economy, or even the job market. Unfortunately, this same declinism bias sometimes shows its face in healthcare. Like when you hear someone on the ward say something like, "Back in my day, we used to work so hard that we didn't have time to worry about things like mental health and burnout." Mental health. Welcome to End of Shift. If you are new to the channel, I'm a medical resident who believes that we should all talk a little more openly about the stresses of our lives in medicine. So if discussing current medical issues and receiving tips and tricks on how to reduce stress is something that interests you, please feel free to hit the subscribe button down below. Our topic for today is, what exactly is burnout? You hear it all the time, but what exactly is it? See, what I didn't realize about burnout was that my perception was probably off in the beginning. See, it's easy to think of burnout as being just the same thing as depression, because the symptoms really do overlap quite a bit. But see, burnout is more specific than that. Burnout is a chronic state of stress that not only leads to the physical and emotional exhaustion that you get in depression, but it also causes these feelings of cynicism and detachment, and also feeling ineffective and having a lack of accomplishment. Now, you can see how that would be problematic for especially training medical residents. Why you've been hearing a lot about burnout lately is because it is really important when it comes to careers in medicine. Statistically, those in medicine are at an extremely high risk of suffering from burnout, especially after graduating from medical school. Among the physicians that were questioned in the 2018 Medscape survey, 42% of physicians reported that they experienced symptoms of burnout. 42%, like almost half. So I wanted to talk about some burnout myths. Myth number one is that you're going to pick a specialty that does not get impacted by burnout. You're going to pick something really cush. Your life is going to be cake and easy. Well, the statistics don't really match that. So if you think that you're going to avoid burnout by picking a certain specialty, I hate to break it to you, but that's probably not going to happen. Taking a look at this chart, you can see critical care is up there very, very high. Physical medicine and rehab, which was very surprising to me, is up there at 44%. I thought, PM&R, doesn't that stand for plenty of money and relaxation? Well, no, they're saying that they're burnt out. Urology up here at 40%. Dermatology and plastics were down at the bottom, but when you look at the percentages, 23% of plastic surgeons and over 32% of dermatology physicians feel burnt out. So that's a huge number. That's not acceptable by any means. So, I want to dispel that myth right off the bat that you can pick a specialty and you're going to be completely sheltered away from burnout. That's just not the case. We do see that burnout actually affects women more than men. 48% of women that were surveyed reported symptoms of burnout as opposed to 38% of their male counterparts. But 38 and 48 is not great numbers. So, you're not protected either way. And lastly, we can just wait until you're burnt out and then you can take the steps to try to fix it. Well, that's the current system that we have. That is what physicians are doing now that's leading to 42% of them to feel burnt out. And it's for this exact reason that it's truly unfortunate how there are still some in the medical culture that seem to downplay burnout. There's like this weird carryover mentality of tough it out. I lived through it. So this came up on Twitter not that long ago. One of the Twitter users that I follow, her name is Barbie. I think she goes by @theblondemd. She had mentioned that she was feeling a little burnt out. I believe that she's in her intern year. This is right around the time when most interns start to feel some of those symptoms of burnout. And the American Medical Association actually wrote her a handwritten letter that says, "Thank you for talking about this. It's such an important topic." And I thought that was great. And then I read the response to that. For the most part, I will say that for the most part, it was a genuine outpouring of sympathy and compassion, and it was really inspiring. But then I came across a response. It said, I'm so concerned that so many residents are talking about burnout. Is this like a shift in the culture? When I was a resident, we were too busy learning medicine and too worried trying not to look incompetent during morning report. We didn't have time to worry about burnout. You see, I mean, this is the problem, right? We've waited too long to talk about burnout for a lot of people. We've just let it go and we've kind of swallowed it up. We don't want to look incompetent on morning rounds, and so we stay up extra hours, we get up extra early, we don't take time for our own health and well-being, and we worry so much about being competent physicians and not looking bad in front of other doctors that we put ourselves under so much stress and so much pressure that by the time we come attendings, we're on the path to burnout already. We can't wait until we have a bunch of residents who are already burnt out. We need to start doing things early on in their career that will allow them to prevent ever becoming burnt out. So, what should you do? Recognize the symptoms of burnout in yourself and your other medical students and co-residents. Hopefully, your residency program, like mine, is already taking steps to enact policies and procedures to measure your burnout and measure your rate of stress so that they can try to step in and correct things before it gets too late. The second thing is, do not believe anybody who tells you that you're weak for expressing your symptoms of stress and burnout. Remember that it's this mentality that you can just kind of get through it and it'll never come back to bite you that has led to the burnout crisis that we're in right now, where 42% of physicians feel that they're burnt out. The last thing is kind of the inspiration for this channel. Maybe find a side project that doesn't take up too much of your time, but gives you a chance to be creative and have a sort of community outside of the hospital. So, final thoughts. We need to take the advice that comes from senior physicians with a grain of salt, because number one, remember declinism bias. We have a tendency to think of things in the past as being better than they truly were. And the fact is, medical training is improving. We're making strides. We're pointing out the things that were wrong, that were burning out trainees and making them not want to go into medicine. It's just going to take a little time. Remember that it's very possible that the person giving you advice about your burnout and about why you shouldn't worry about burnout could very well themselves be burnt out. The last thing that we need in this system is physicians who are cynical and detached, giving recommendations to young physicians so that they grow up to be cynical and detached. Thank you to OR Barbie and at the Blonde MD for talking about this, and I'm so glad that kind of that whole discussion happens so that people can see we need to be able to talk about this and we need to be able to stop the cycle early on. Well, that's the end of the video, and I am post 24-hour call, so I am going to go into the bed and go and join Vinny, who's snoring extremely loudly in there. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode, and you will join me again next time on End of Shift.